more critical analysis of the just concluded Anambra governorship election have continued to surface. The latest is coming from the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Muhammad Yakub, who attributed challenges faced with the deployment of the bimodal voter accreditation system, Bvas, in the recent governorship election in Anambra State to human error rather than machine malfunction. Speaking with media executives in Lagos, Yakubu said that INEC will ensure the implementation of direct primary has passed the National Assembly as soon as it was assented to by President Muhammadu Buhari. He pointed out that many of the Commission's partners backed out of the Anambra elections at the last minute because of security concerns. He noted that in June this year, INEC introduced the Bvas, which performed the functions of smart card readers, SCR, and the Z-Pad, saying that the Anambra election has been universally adjudged to be credible. Tundu, your take on this?
Well, what I recall is those rumors that made the rounds in the press and on social media that there was a mass resignation of INEC staff, which INEC came out to debunk. I guess they spoke too soon because from what this report suggests, that it wasn't about the INEC was fully in control of the situation. People were scared. It showed up in the voter apathy, and I guess it also showed with the INEC staff who voted with their feet and stayed away. So that's really unfortunate. And that point needs to really be stressed ahead of the 2023 general election, which we do hope is not as tense in the run-up as Anambra State was. But in the event that it is, INEC cannot rely, as they did with Anambra, on the fact that, oh no, everybody's fine, we've trained our staff, we're ready to go, which was the statement that we got. And their staff let them down. Understandably, I'm sorry if I was the staff, I'd also think about it. And also with regards to INEC staff, it's not a question of quantity, is it? It's also quality. Because even though they did have enough personnel to man all the polling units, the quality of the personnel was lacking. If there was so much human error and they did not know how to operate the Bvas, that is a huge lapse that has happened. And it's good that they've come out and expressed that. And I hope that they look into it.
Dr. Bvas?
Well, one, I find the effort of the INEC chair quite interesting. And he's been consistent in that regard. After every election, he either organizes a post-mortem or he goes to the media to give an account of what had happened and try to explain himself or his institution that he leads to the public. And I think that the meeting that he had with the media in Lagos yesterday, which is, or was it in Abuja, wherever, but he held a meeting, with the media, and he tried to give an account of what transpired in Anambra. One of the major outcomes of the Anambra election was a concern about late voting, about the malfunction of, this bimodal verification system, which was supposed to be the second time that it will be tested. Having been tested previously in an election in Isoko, in Delta, and then Anambra was supposed to be the second litmus test for this bimodal verification system. But as it turned out, it failed in many places. Now we have the INEC chairman coming forward to say, well, it wasn't because the technology itself was deficient. It was simply because of human error. And what was his explanation? And I think it makes sense. He says that most of the people that they trained to be part of that, to help them in that election, ad hoc staff, many of them pulled out because of security concerns. Two, also because of security concerns, the rapid response mechanism that INEC had put in place could not work because the vehicle owners who had elected to work with them at the last minute also pulled out because of security concerns. And it's a no-brainer that in that Anambra election, security was a major issue. Even many voters stayed away because of security. Even some of the candidates were, campaigning, from a distant location, again because of security. Okay, we understand that. And he made a strong point that, however, what they have observed, one of the lessons they've learned, is that, look, technology, the deployment of technology is critical for the electoral process. And that, the simplest form of technology is much better than the manual process. And isn't that what many of us have been asking for? That if we deploy technology, in a transparent manner, then of course we'll be able to achieve a lot more with our electoral process. Now, Professor Yakubu at that briefing yesterday then pointed out that there's another test on February 12th. There will be end of tenure election in the Federal Capital Territory municipal elections. That will be another opportunity for INEC to test the Bvas, which combines the functions of the smart card reader and the Z pad that we were using previously. And we look forward to that, and we hope that in that February 12 election in the Federal Capital Territory, that no excuse will be given, because we don't expect, that the circumstances will be almost exactly the same as we had in Anambra. But one major takeaway for me, apart from the point that the INEC chairman made about technology, was a point that he also made about INEC being ready to be held accountable, not just by the media. He says, no, it's not just the media that should double-check the activities of INEC, that he also expects that every citizen, clearly, is a stakeholder in this matter, can hold INEC accountable. And I hope that Nigerians will take special note of that and also have the confidence to raise questions when elections are held. Then he talked about direct primaries, and he says that INEC is prepared once the president appends his signature to the bill as presented before him to take it on. But again, one of his directors had pointed out before now that will mean additional burden for INEC. It will mean the deployment, of more personnel on the part of INEC. And I hope that this is, Professor Yakubu's way of saying that they are ready psychologically, and I hope they are also ready in terms of materials, to be able to give effect to the primaries. And he said, of course, continuous voter registration is one of the things they've been doing, and that over 4 million voters have been further registered, and that at the moment, the voters' population of Nigeria stands at slightly above 84 million. So as a way of updating us, I think that exercise by INEC is in order, and I hope that the INEC leadership will remain consistent on that point, because the future of Nigeria, the stability of Nigeria, depends clearly on the credibility of not just the 2023 general elections, but all other by-elections, off-cycle elections before then.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Patian Tundu, for your thoughts. That's all on News Headline. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll have Rotu Sodiri, Michael Wilson, Adesu Amora, and Aaron Akerjola to give us updates on Africa, global business, COVID-19, and sporting activities across the globe. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the Morning Show here on Arise News. Our dependable Rotu Sodiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning to all our viewers. We kick off with Central Bank of Nigeria launching an entrepreneurship scheme for youth. It's about a 500 million naira scheme. This scheme is targeted at reducing underemployment and unemployment, specifically for the youth. And it's mainly focused on access to finance. And as far as the program is concerned, there will be youth, that is, who are still in school but are about to graduate or just graduated, will be able to access loans between 5 million and 25 million naira to be able to launch their businesses. They'll get a period of about 5 years to pay it back. It's going to be single digits, I believe, about 5%. And there's a collaboration for this scheme with tertiary institutions, polytechnics and universities. Central Bank Governor Godwin Emefiele has been talking a lot about entrepreneurship. I mean, he supports white-collar jobs and so on, blue-collar jobs for youth, but he's been stressing a lot when he talks about education in that youth have to be empowered to be able to branch out on their own and not have to develop and not have to depend too much on white collar and blue collar jobs. So this is really a lot about empowerment. We know what our youth unemployment numbers and underemployment numbers are in the nation. We see the impact in terms of insecurity, poverty, and so on and so forth. So this is the central bank yet again intervening in another sector. As the central bank governor mentioned, the litany of sectors during the MPC meeting where they held all their rates constant. He talked about the gradual recovery of the economy, based in part, based a lot actually, on interventions from the central bank on different sectors, so healthcare, manufacturing, and so on. But this is for education. So, again, it's very much needed when we think about setting up our youth for tomorrow and making sure that they are gainfully employed. And entrepreneurship, again, with the partnership with polytechnics and universities, I think Dr. Otundo mentioned this in the past, but there's a need for curriculum revamps, right? The curriculums in our curriculums in our schools, public and private, are they geared towards getting our youth prepared for entrepreneurship? Can you train folks in that regard? So that's something that needs to be addressed. But here is the central bank, putting funding there to assist them. Speaking of the central bank, the Governor Mefele later on this evening will be addressing the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. So that's going to be covered by us. So I implore all our viewers to tune in for that later on this evening. Still in Nigeria, I've been waiting for the PDP to engage the ruling party on economics, not just, politics. So it was very interesting to listen to comments from Dr. Iyochia Ayu, who is the national chairman designate of the PDP. He addressed the media after a 2-day retreat to inaugurate newly elected members of their National Working Council. And he was talking to the media on fuel subsidies, which has been a very touchy subject. But his message was kind of hazy. And maybe they need to consult doctor on this. But he said two things. He said that if you are poor in Nigeria, fuel subsidies are not meant for you, and this is are not gained to helping you. This is something that the World Bank said in their latest Nigeria Development Update report. We talked about that. Dr. Doi Salami has talked about it. Arise business analyst Chika Mbon has talked about it. Doctors mentioned it for everybody, right? The fact that the fuel subsidies are more for wealthier Nigerians. So he made that point, and that's a correct point. But then he also said that if you increase the price of petroleum products today, that is going to inflict more hardship on Nigerians. So he's against, or maybe he's speaking for the PDP, they're against increasing the pump price, or rather price of petroleum products, which is essentially removing subsidy and increasing price. Interestingly, he didn't say anything about the government exploring whether or not to use savings from the subsidy to alleviate the impact of the higher prices. That's the 5,000 naira transportation allowance, about 30-40 million. He didn't say anything about that. So I just thought it was a mixed message. One, acknowledging that subsidies don't help the poor, but then two, saying that they're against increasing the price of petroleum products, that it will inflict more hardship on Nigerians. So as we get closer to the election, I would hope that Nigerians are going to ask for, more substantive economic debates between the PDP and the APC, because at some point the PDP has to put forward a clear message on what they are going to do should they return to power on economic matters, especially this fuel subsidy thing. And I guess this shows how difficult this issue is. With an election coming up, inflation is high, people's pockets are impacted. What are you going to do specifically? So his message was kind of mixed. To Kenya, India's tea board, which is the TBIA, Tea Board of India, is putting in place curbs on imports of tea from Kenya. It looks like tea farmers in India have been complaining that cheaper tea coming from India, from Kenya into India, is affecting their markets. And India is, they're quite protectionist, and they've been trying to protect their tea farmers. The largest tea producers in the world, China, India, and Kenya. But Kenya, actually, as far as exports, global exports of tea, they've been ahead of India. So this is a big blow to Kenya because, as you know, they've been trying to reduce their budget deficit. They want to increase as many trade relationships as possible with different countries. So these curbs, which has been coming from complaints from tea farmers in India, it could be a big blow to Kenya's. In fact, look at this. Kenya's exports in half year 2020 Kenya exported 1.5 million kilos of tea to India. Half year 2021, that went to 2.8 million kilos. So Kenya has been increasing their tea exports to India. And then finally, Uhuru Kenyatta, still on Kenya. Uhuru Kenyatta is turning to South Africa to assist Kenya in building their old and aging railway network. He's turning to Transnet Engineering Company, which is a South African company, I believe it's state-owned. This will be the first African company to assist Kenya with their railway framework since a Chinese company assisted Kenya with the Mombasa-Naivasha rail line. So Kenyatta was in Pretoria for the last 3 days. I think you should see images of him touring the Transnet Engineering Company's railway setup. So it's going to be interesting to see how things turn out in that regard.
Okay, Rochus, let me just go straight at it. We've got short time. Number one, what is happening as regards tea in India is the fact that the farmers have pushed back over the years. They've been on strike, and Modi is trying to pacify them. After that long strike, he's giving the farmers all they want. Why? Because elections is just around the corner, state elections. So that's politically based, and Modi knows what he's doing. Let me quickly move to the PDP's reaction and all of that. The truth about this matter is why we're feeling the pain with petrol is because we have not over the years developed bimodal means of transportation. So in the UK, for instance, a lot of people will pack their cars in the morning and get in the train. So when you go to the train station in the morning, you see a lot of cars packed. Why? Because there are alternative means of transportation. We don't have that in Nigeria. A clear case in point will have been over the years, about 1 or 2 years when we had the time, we could have been thinking of how to ramp up CNG. You had an interview with Innocent yesterday. He said he started producing cars with CNG. I thought a lot of people will have thought about how we can ramp up that production. He says he can make electric cars. I thought a lot of people will have wrapped up those capacities and look for alternative means. So the problem why this will impact on people is because there are tons and tons of cars driving on the road. We don't have intercity rail system where a lot of people can pack their cars and go take trains. And that's why there's a big impact on the economy. So once we solve that problem, then we start to do a lot of work. I wanted to talk a little bit about Transnet, but I'll have to leave the time for my colleagues.
Well, the CBN. Oh, okay. No, go ahead.
Okay, well, I think we're both interested in the same topic, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of fine print there, or the small print, for what the CBN requires in order to get that loan. And like you said, we're not quite sure what the panel was looking for in giving the loan, but I imagine that the conditions must have been quite stringent because it's not charity. So under this loan, applicants must be graduates of Nigerian polytechnics or university with your BSc or HND or equivalent, NYC discharge, or exemption certificate. You know, there's some not more than 7 years post-NYC, so it's not just open to any and everybody. I just wanted to share that. But I wonder what the selection criteria was like. Yeah.
Well, you recall that in July, the CBN governor, while speaking at an Association of Vice Chancellors event, talked about what he called the Tertiary Institutions Entrepreneurship Scheme, TIES. And under that scheme, he was calling on the university vice chancellors to collaborate with the CBN to promote entrepreneurship. And at that time, he was saying that, look, there is a need for what he called a paradigm shift in terms of the school-to-work transition. And the need to ensure that we tie the school-to-work transition to the development of MSMEs, medium and small scale enterprises. In October, the CBN announced this 500 million youth entrepreneurs scheme. So it's good to see that they are not going to move ahead with it, with the schemes. But you made the point about the curriculum. Look, if you look at the curriculum in our education system from primary to tertiary, what we still have is rote learning, rather than teaching our students to apply knowledge. And I think with regard to entrepreneurship, with the CBN believes will help with the issues of underemployment, unemployment, and changing the orientation of the average Nigerian graduate so that he doesn't think, look, it's only white-collar jobs that are available there. What can you do in agriculture? What can you do in terms of small-scale enterprises? I think that, you know, this is the way of the future, and the CBN providing leadership in that regard, you know, should be commended. But there will be need for transparency. There will be need for accountability. There will be need to ensure that in making these grants available, that we avoid the Nigerian factor. The Nigerian factor, of course, is about religion. It's about ethnicity. It's about geography. And, you know, those are the big elephants in the room. that the managers of this scheme will have to look out for, so that we don't have that same problem. You recall the Anchor Borrowers program, when some people were saying one part of the country was favored, another part was not favored, until the CBN came up with detailed statistics to say that, in fact, the Anchor Borrowers program was fair and that it was evenly distributed across Nigeria. As for the PDP and Dr. Yoche Ayu, chairman-designate of the People's Democratic Party, well, Dr. Yoche Ayu says the PDP has not met on the issue of removal of fuel subsidy. But, well, may he be reminded that under President Obasanjo, the position was that the subsidy regime was unsustainable. And that was consistent even under the last PDP government at the center, the Jonathan administration. You will recall that on January 1, 2012, the Jonathan administration deregulated the downstream sector. That resulted in the Occupy Nigeria protest of 2012. But the argument then is the same argument now, that if you retain the subsidy, you have financing, you are funding inefficiency, opaqueness, and creating room for rent collectors to continue to ride roughshod over the fortunes of Nigeria. Now, I don't think that the issue of the removal of the subsidy should be politicized. What we require is a non-partisan approach. And every political party that has ideas, should bring those ideas to the table. This is not something you play politics with. We play politics with it in 2012, but we have returned to it again in 2020, 2021, 2022. And that's one lesson that the professional political class can take away from this whole issue about how to rescue the downstream sector in Nigeria. There are basic things that have to be done, and labor must be included in that rethinking of the way forward. However, we're told that that subsidy, when it is removed, is not captured in any part of the 2022 budget. That in itself may be an issue. So if the PDP has not held a strategic meeting on this important subject, they should do so post-haste.
Right, thank you for your time, Rotis. Moving on to more business update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, good morning. The only thing driving markets today are increased now, or renewed, should I say, COVID fears. Nikkei's down in Japan. SoftBank as well going down. I'll come on to that, the detail of that. But basically, all these losses, the World Health Organization officials said yesterday, they're monitoring a new variant with a large number of mutations. They're saying it's one of the worst that they've seen so far, and that's spreading into Hong Kong's volatility as well. China's real estate volatility continues, whilst the plunge in Evergrande's shares has slightly leveled off. Volatility in other companies is still fairly high. The reason I'm mentioning this is that foreign investors are now saying they're largely in the dark because they're not hearing anything from whether or not whether they're timely corporate disclosures or indeed what government policy about this is. So back to SoftBank and the detail there. It extended losses today as a result of Chinese regulators have asked DiDi's executives to formulate a plan to delist from the US. That's 20%. SoftBank's Vision Fund owns more than 20% of DiDi, so you can see why that's happening. The regulators want DiDi to delist because they're worried about, or they say they're worried about data concerns there. So Dow futures, then remember, no markets in the United States yesterday because of Thanksgiving, but there is a futures market, a small trading window today, down 400 points as a result of this new COVID variant, which apparently has been found in South Africa. NASDAQ down 2. And the United Kingdom, I'll come on to this as well, has temporarily has actually stopped flights from 6 southern African countries, including South Africa, and investors are taking a flight to safety. That's what's going. The IEA chief executive is saying that artificial tightness in energy markets has not been helped at all by anybody trying to cool the prices. This is the first such move of its kind. Remember, Joe Biden was announcing this release of oil. The US, India, China, South Korea, and the UK joined in to release some of their strategic reserves. We'll wait to see what OPEC thinks about that on December the 2nd. The EU, in the EU, the Greens, we were talking about this very briefly yesterday. The EU, the Greens will be taking charge of foreign policy. Here she is. That's Annalena Baerbock. She is the Greens leader. She'll be taking care, we think, of foreign policy, which means it's going to be guided by human rights and values. No problem about that. There's supposed to be a veiled criticism of what happened with Angela Merkel. It's certain that Russia and China will be in her sights, whatever that actually means. UK then, coronavirus sparks new travel curbs. The variant is up and running as we understand it. This happened that from 12 today, GMT today, there'll be a new red list of countries from southern Africa. One of the experts decided this variant is the worst one we've ever seen. No confirmed cases in the UK and only 59 cases confirmed in South Africa, Hong Kong and Botswana so far. But that's the way things are. As soon as these things arise, then there is now an immediate clamp down. Authorities are not going to get caught out. It looks like in a blame game of who blinked first. They're all blinking at the same time. UK, Black Friday. I'm sure you're going through the same kind of remorseless assault by retailers and so on. They're set to splurge here. They think that spending will be up on 2019. Of course, no comparable figures during the lockdown because there's no point in those. Yet some big brands are actually shunning all this, saying, you know what, we can't actually reduce prices because we haven't made enough on the big brands over the year and during the lockdown. Black Friday, it began in the United States. It's called Black because it's when retailers traditionally went into the black as a result of losses they may have made during the year. Oil is in full retreat now, down to, I'm looking at 80.70 as far as Brent's concerned, and WTI at 76.40 as a result of these new COVID things. It's going to affect growth. It'll certainly stop flights. And gold is only edging higher very, very slightly. I only mention this because you would expect a flight to safety. Gold is one of those. It's really the safe currencies like sterling and the dollar that are appreciating very, very slightly. But so far, the markets themselves, although the equities are down a huge amount in those futures I was bringing you, have not really reacted to this. But I suspect it'll be the only conversation around today. That's the global view.
All right, Michael, real quickly. So you were very bullish a couple of days ago about the gambit President Joe Biden was playing by releasing more oil, from the reserves of America. But the gambit didn't work. It didn't work at all. So, I don't know why you were bullish about it. That's number one. Hang on a minute.
I simply said, what I said was that it won't make any difference. It's down to OPEC meeting on December the 2nd. I wasn't bullish about those prospects at all. I think it's interesting that there appears to be some kind of diplomacy over releasing energy prices. But in terms of what was released, no difference at all to the market, no.
Yeah, so no difference at all. Secondly, I want to talk about what happened to Bulb in the UK, the company, the energy company. Now, the government will have to inject about 1.17 billion pounds sterling because it's going into special administration. Somebody would have wondered that Kwasi Kwarteng will have put in those capital injections before now, or the government will have rallied around those energy companies before now. Why do they have to wait this long before the bubble bursts? Is it just another maladministration or Peppa Pig politics under Boris Johnson?
The official explanation for this is that whilst I think about 30 odd companies have actually gone into, I'm looking at the figures now, it's between 27 and 30 have actually gone, but they've been small ones. The thing about Bulb was that the feeling was that Ofgem, which is the regulator, could not ask other companies to absorb the 1.2 million customers of Bulb into their own things. The smaller ones, fine. The size of bulb made a difference. This is why the taxpayer, for better or worse, is going to be paying £1.7 billion to keep bulb in administration whilst it continues to work. What happens is that Ofgem promised that nobody will be cut off as a result of this. They'll be shifted to other suppliers. That's happened as far as the smaller companies are concerned. Bulb was so big. This is the explanation being offered. I'm neither supporting it nor attacking it. I'm just saying this is what's actually happening. So yes, the taxpayer will be bailing out bulb until something actually happens. The whole energy market, as I've said before on this program, is not fit for purpose. The business of it is not fit for purpose. It's pointless putting caps on what companies can actually charge if they're paying more for the wholesale prices that they're charging retail prices for. I mean, that just clearly is not going to work. So something is going to have to shift. I suspect it will. Maladministration, I wouldn't go that far yet. Let's see how it works out.
Well, OPEC makes next week, in July, excuse me, there was the agreement to add to the supply 400 million barrels per day, 400,000 barrels per day, however, per month rather, you know. Now, since then, OPEC has not been able to meet that target. It's behind by about 500,000 barrels per day. And then you have this release of inventories, strategic reserves by the US and some other countries, including Japan. Now, what are we likely to see next week in terms of OPEC decision? Is OPEC going to make a move to take control of the demand and supply calculus, or is there any incentive to change anything at all? That's with regard to OPEC next week. And then
let's get one thing here. OPEC is in charge of supply. What we're seeing here is, it may be a calculus going on, Doctor, but what's actually happening is that OPEC said that what it would do at this last meeting was increase supply by $400,000 per day on a monthly basis. Let's get so that's the actual figures. Now, will this release of the strategic reserves alter their position on December the 2nd when they actually meet? It doesn't seem enough to me to make any difference to their position at the moment. All they're interested in is keeping the price of oil, because they are a cartel. OPEC and OPEC Plus are a cartel. They're keeping the price where they want it at the moment. It hasn't actually dipped significantly, and it didn't move at all, I suggest, yesterday, until the news of that release of the various the strategic petroleum reserves actually hit the markets yesterday. What drove the market down today is the new COVID variant. So I think that that needs also to be built in to the December the 2nd discussions, which we'll hear about at the end of next Friday, I think it is, next Thursday, in Vienna. So I think when we actually get that, then we can make some idea about what OPEC's going to do. What they will do is they will be tempted to do absolutely nothing.
Well, I was also going to draw attention to this new COVID variant that has been reported, and the market has reacted very sharply. What are we dealing with here? Is it paranoia? Because it looks like deja vu. All of a sudden, stocks are falling. Investors are rushing to safe havens. Is it paranoia?
Yes, I think that if you think that markets are driven by greed and fear, which I do, this is the fear side of things. I mean, it's as simple as that. I think that things may level out. The actual number of cases, remember I said this in my report, none in the UK, between about 50 in other countries as well. I mean, that's so tiny. 59 confirmed cases in South Africa, Hong Kong, and Botswana so far. I mean, that's not world shattering. The problem is that this variant is being seen by a so-called expert at the World Health Organization as being the worst one we've seen so far. That's why you've got the fear. Nobody wants to be caught out this time. Nobody cares about why should you care about the travel companies and tourism, apart from the business to your country? There'll be a lot of very long faces in the South Africa tourism industry this morning when they see this, but the governments will be saying to them, I'm sorry, this is what we do. We shut, as soon as there's the faintest whiff of fear, we shut things down. And that's what's happening to the equity markets as well. I mean, we'll see how today pans out. I suspect that over the weekend we'll get a lot more detail, and maybe the markets will be leveling off next week, but it'll be panic today, no question.
All right, thank you guys so much. I think it's only safe to listen to Coldplay, Don't Panic. For updates on COVID-19 pandemic, Adeso Omorwa is here with us. Adeso, great to have you.
Thank you so much, Rufai. You couldn't have said it better. Don't panic, however, don't let down your guards. Good morning, Dr. Vati, and good morning, Chundun.
Morning.
Well, morning, guys. Over 7.5 million doses of vaccines have now been administered globally as the global infections from the coronavirus surpass another green milestone of 260 million as at this moment, according to the Johns Hopkins University. Very quickly, let's look at this data from around the world. In Nigeria, 65 new cases were reported and one COVID-19 related death also after 3 days of pause from COVID deaths in the country. The NCDC is now reporting one COVID-19 related death was recorded in the last 24 hours, and this tally were reported from 9 states as well as the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. A look at the vaccination data as provided by the NPHCDA in Nigeria in the last 24 hours shows that 47,223 eligible Nigerians received the first dose yesterday, while 23,601 others showed up for their second jabs. And now, as the global pandemic enters its second winter, from Southern Africa comes another disturbing news. We've been talking about this. Yesterday, Tundu, we touched on this yesterday, but in Botswana, I had said yesterday on the show that the new variant had been recorded in 10 countries. I was very wrong. It was 10 cases as of yesterday when we spoke. But now we have almost 60 cases recorded, as Michael Wilson has just said. And scientists in South Africa said they have detected over 50 cases alone of B11529 variant. And they are working to understand the potential implications of this variant. The variant has been detected in Hong Kong in fully vaccinated individuals who took the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccines. It's also been detected in Botswana, where it is believed to have emanated from, and in South Africa. In all, there are almost 60 cases at the moment around the world. WHO officials and the South African government are to discuss today on the situation. Perhaps next time we'll meet, next week, we'll have updates of what exactly this variant is and if it's been given a new name. But at the moment, it's the B11529 variant. Now, no one knows for sure how transmissible this new variant is or how severe an illness it might cause, but I can tell you it is prompting travel bans and drastic measures, again, like Michael Wilson had just said, and even the markets are reacting. British scientists are describing it as the most concerning they have seen yet since the start of the pandemic. But let's listen to the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, what he had to say about this new variant.
Stated on this variant by the UK Health Security Agency, and they have now designated it as a variant under investigation. The early indications we have of this variant is that it may be more transmissible than the Delta variant, and the vaccines that we currently have may be less effective against it. So what we will be doing is from midday tomorrow, we will be suspending all flights from 6 Southern African countries, and we will adding those countries to the travel red list. Those countries are South Africa, Namibia, Lesotho, Eswatini, and Zimbabwe, and Botswana. And we will be requiring anyone that arrives from those countries from 4 a.m. on Sunday to quarantine in hotels. If anyone arrives before then, they should self-isolate at home and take a PCR test.
Well, in Israel, that's the UK Health Secretary. In Israel, these 7 countries of Botswana, South Africa, Mozambique, Namibia, Eswatini, and Yes, I think that's about it. They have also been added to Israel's red list. What does this mean? It means that citizens of these 7 southern African countries will not be eligible to enter Israel. It also means that Israelis cannot travel to those countries. Australia just released a statement this morning saying it is reviewing the situation and may have to follow in the steps of the UK government and, of course, the Israeli government. And finally, this morning, the WHO in Africa says Africa frontline workers are inadequately protected against the COVID-19, with data revealing only a quarter of health workers on the continent are fully vaccinated against the virus. WHO's Africa Director, Mashitizo Moeti, Dr. Moeti, says the reasons for this slow or very low disappointing numbers on the continent include vaccination hesitancy and, of course, the unavailability of vaccine services, especially in the rural areas. Disappointing when you think that these are frontline workers, guys.
Amazing stuff, amazing stuff. Really disappointing the fact that frontline workers are not even getting the vaccines. So I want to go back to this variant that is coming out of the southern part of Africa. You see, when we kept on banging on about vaccine equity, you are not safe until some other people have gotten their vaccine, the West thought it was a joke, and it's coming home to roost now. I'll bandy around a couple of hypotheses, and please mark me, it's just hypothesis. What probably would have happened would be low vaccination rates in those areas, in countries like Botswana, in countries like Eswatini, in countries like Mozambique, in countries like Zimbabwe, across that southern part. And what will have happened was the fact that more people got COVID, and then the virus could iterate itself and mutate and form this, and then it starts to spread to other parts. And another thing I probably think would have happened, if you check that part, that southern African countries, they normally have their winter around June to August. So it is just the stretch out of their winter. And we all know what winter does for viruses. Gives them a good room to hibernate and incubate and things like that. So I probably think, and I repeat my hypothesis, that it is what is coming out of that area after the hibernation of the virus, and probably people could pass it on, and they didn't have vaccination to stop it in its tracks. That is what has snowballed into all of this. So when we kept on making that noise, and Tedros Ghebreyesus of the World Health Organization kept on making that noise, the West thought, oh, what are they saying? And now, just because of what is happening in the southern part of Africa, it's got reverberating effects in the world. Guess where the market first tumbled? It was far away in Japan, another part of the world entirely. The Nikkei felt the heat. Markets around the world are taking precautions. The UK is putting a travel ban, and saying, if you're coming out of South Africa, you have to quarantine, and we have to check the situation. The part of it that says don't panic is this. Yes, it's a variant of concern, but we have not seen immense reproduction rate. Over 50 cases thereabout, or 60 cases, correct me if I'm wrong on that. But according to the synthesis of this virus, they're saying it's really big. It's like the Delta variant. And even bigger than the Delta variant. And you
variant of interest.
Variant of interest. And you even remember what caused the Delta variant in the first place. It was the same, a certain Narendra Modi trying to play politics in India, trying to win more election seats and allow people to go for the Kumbh Mela festival. And there was a clear mix, and then the virus spread, and we had the Delta variant. So please, I'm sure we are learning lessons from this in Lagos and some other parts. December is coming. Dirty December it is. You are going to have a lot of traffic. Please, I think it is only time for Lagos to bring back at least the max mandate, since we are not winning the war on vaccination yet. A lot of people are not vaccinated.
B11529. 59 cases already reported in South Africa, Botswana, and Hong Kong. 30 forms of variations, which is even double that of the Delta variant. And that is what makes this latest, COVID variant a variant of concern. And it is partly the reason why it has caused so much paranoia. We're told today that the WHO is going to find a name for it under the Greek alphabet so that people don't invent, the label of the name of a country to put to it. But the thing, of course, is that many of these countries are just taking precautions. And that's the main point that was made by Sajid Javid, that what they've done by saying that no more, whoever comes from Southern Africa, or flights have been banned, or if you manage to come in, then you quarantine immediately. It's just precaution. Because let it not be said that what happened previously when countries failed to act, and then they had a problem on their hands. Israel has even banned his own citizens from traveling to Southern Africa. And the question that I ask is that, yes, the rate of transmissibility has not yet been determined yet. Scientists are working on it. Maybe at the end of the day, it may not even be as highly transmissible as the Delta variant, or before it, the Beta variant. But whatever happens, it's better to be careful. What is Nigeria saying? I've not seen, any statement from the Nigerian side about flights from the southern part of Africa. And I think that, part of our concern should be that the Nigerian government perhaps should follow the example of Britain and Northern Ireland, and follow the example also of Israel in this matter. The point about healthcare workers, only about 1% out of 1 out of 1,000, health workers in Africa are fully immunized, which is a very small number compared to what you find in some other parts of the world. And the fear is that this may be due no longer to the fact that there is no vaccine. There's been an increase in the supply of vaccines to the continent, even if capacity varies from one African country to the other in terms of how this is administered. But the problem is vaccine hesitancy, even among health workers. And that in itself is a big problem as we move towards the winter season. If the health workers are not vaccinated, then it means that even the patients that they are to attend to are vulnerable. That's the challenge.
Oh, I've been allowed to speak? Okay. The Delta variant's new, more threatening, more evil sibling, which we expect is going to be called new when the scientists eventually name it, is really very alarming indeed. I remember raising this issue yesterday, and that it's also so unfortunate that this has happened in Africa and how we're just constantly behind on this vaccination issue. Buttressed by the fact that you have now shared this really tragic statistics about our African health workers. At a time where others are getting booster shots, we're not even in that conversation. I hope you realize that many of us who were really quick off the bat to get vaccinated, our immunity is waning as we speak. Those who are elderly and immunocompromised are vulnerable. And we now have this more evolved strain of COVID-19 to contend with. It's really awful. And I don't know what can be done about Africa, why we continue to lag behind in this manner. The reason, well, Rufai, you mentioned the Japanese markets. The reason for that is because this variant has traveled to Hong Kong. They're not reacting to what's happening in Botswana or South Africa. A traveler has taken it. And this is the point that you were making. The fact is that there's, no man is an island. No country is in a vacuum. The kind of selfishness that we saw with the more developed nations is really, unfortunately, coming home to roost at this point. But we do need to get onto that conversation about boosters. That is assuming that the vaccines that have been produced at this point are efficient or effective against this new variant. They might not be. Not enough light has been shed on that. It's really a really worrying development indeed.
You cannot be more correct, Sundum.
Well, thank you so much, Ade. So that's all we have time for. Have a great weekend.